Gun owners in Illinois know that you have to have a firearm owner identification card, or at least law-abiding gun owners. I'm sure there's some gun owners who are criminals that possess guns that aren't allowed to have them because of prior felonies or whatever the case, and they might be committing all kinds of crimes with those illegal guns, but or being in possession of a gun illegally. But law-abiding gun owners know that you have to file with Illinois State Police in order to have a firearm, not just own it, but also purchase it, or to purchase or own ammunition. So the FOID card's been around since like the 60s. There's been all kinds of different changes brought about to it, and even lawsuits brought over it. And we talked last week about a case that was decided out of Madison County, where a judge there actually sided with the people who were challenging the FOID card provision that says that if you're arrested, your FOID card can be suspended. So we talked about this with Thomas Magg, who brought that case, and it's a years-old case. I mean, this case stretches back all the way to 2017. In just a brief synopsis of the case, you had a couple of individuals on Independence Day. Fireworks are going off. They get out a firearm. They shoot it into the ground. Police called, and they show up, allege that they shot it into the air. They arrested them. Ultimately, it turned into a misdemeanor, so they paid whatever fine they had to pay, and then they got on with their lives. They got their gun back, but they did not get their FOID card back. So police suspended the FOID cards of the individuals involved here when they were arrested. And while the charges were ultimately dropped down to misdemeanor, they got their gun back, but they took a while for them to get their FOID card back. So ultimately, the case progressed to most recently last month. The judge in that case said that the state police prohibited the state police from suspending FOID cards for merely just being arrested, not being convicted. If you're convicted of a felony, you're convicted of a felony and your rights are going to be limited. But when it comes to just being arrested, you're innocent until proven guilty. So the judge there actually sided with the defendants in that case and ultimately said that, there's an injunction against the state from doing this type of enforcement. Now, the state had a deadline of, I believe, April 12th to file for an appeal. I don't see that listed on the actual court docket for this case anywhere that the state has filed for an appeal. So I'm still trying to get some certainty as to, does that mean this is now the law of the land? The state police cannot suspend a FOID card if you're just merely arrested. So we'll have an update on that for you as I get it, but that's just one FOID card case. We've got another FOID card case in Sangamon County that my next guest has more detail about, and kind of looking forward as to what are the next steps here after a bit of a shakeup in the schedule that we just learned about. So joining us now is from Gun Save Life, John Bach. John, thanks for taking time with us this morning. Give us an idea of what we've got going on here with the case out of Sangamon County.
Well, good morning, Greg. Thanks for having me on. We thought we had a hearing next week to do some oral arguments in front of a judge there in Sangamon County, but something's come up with the judge with health concerns, and that's likely going to be postponed until early June now. So we're looking forward to that. We're not too disappointed because this thing's been brewing since 2019. It's been there for a while. What's another couple of months? Plus, everybody's attention is, of course, on the gun and magazine ban litigation. So we're in good shape, but we're going to argue that in front of the Judge Maurer there in Sangamon County that, text history and tradition is the new standard for evaluating Second Amendment claims in courts. And, of course, there were no FOID cards in 1791, so there's no historical analog the state can point to for legitimizing this unconstitutional restriction of our rights to require people to register, to pay, to exercise their constitutional rights, their fundamental constitutional rights.
So this is a case challenging prima facie on its face that the FOID card is unconstitutional.
Exactly. We're challenging the whole act, and if we're successful, the whole thing will be struck down, and that will end this whole nightmare scenario of the FOID card, which back in 1968, when it was implemented, was Mayor Daley's idea to keep guns out of the hands or to limit the possession of guns by minorities, specifically African Americans in Chicago. It's a racist gun control law, and that's where its origins came from. And that's one thing that we're working today to get rid of because it serves no purpose in today's society. 49 other states have no FOID card, and they do just fine. They don't have Chicago-style violence. They don't have the crime running rampant. In fact, Florida, for example, doesn't have a FOID card, and their violent crime is at 50-year lows.
John Bach, Gun Save Life, with us. We've seen a lot of different things happen with the FOID card just in the past 3 or 4 years. Right before COVID hit, all the stories of people having their rights delayed and getting a FOID card renewed, lasting well beyond the statute, what the statute spells out for people to receive a response on whether or not their FOID card is going to be renewed. You had people who were filing for new FOID cards. I mean, it was 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, 16 months. There were a lot of people who were left in an uncertain place in Illinois. Talk about the harms that's done in way of this bureaucracy getting in the way of what you're saying is people being able to exercise their fundamental Second Amendment rights.
Very much so. It was 525 days for me to get my FOID card renewed the last time around during this COVID thing. Other people were waiting 1, 2, 3, 4 months to get a FOID card issued to them. And when your streets are devolving around your neighborhood or your city, people are rioting, trashing police cars in stores and residences, and you've got to wait 30 or 60 days to get a little card to allow you to go purchase a firearm somewhere. That's obviously grossly problematic and improper, but that's just the way it is in the state of Illinois. We've grown accustomed to it, and that's frankly a shame because once you've lost these rights, it's really difficult to get them back, and we're seeing that in this difficulty with this lawsuit. But we think we're going to be victorious in this in the end because, after all, again, there's no constitutional or no historical analog to a FOID card back in the 1790s. The people back then would laugh at the idea.
John, talk about people who, we hear this question come up every once in a while of, well, I could just go out of state and buy a gun. That's not the case, right, with Illinois' FOID card?
Well, you can go out of state and buy a long gun and bring it back to Illinois. However, you would be a criminal when you came back with it without a FOID card. So, you could go back and wink, wink, nod, nod, bring it back home, kind of like buying fireworks and bring them home. But you're committing a criminal violation by doing so, and you may run into some problems if you use that firearm defensively after you've brought it back before you get a FOID card, and that may lead to some problems for you. But ultimately, some people say better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. At the same time, we encourage people to be legal, and gun owners, by and large, are legal people, law-abiding people, almost to a fault. Which, sadly, in the case of people who leave their guns in the glove box when they go to a rest area, restroom along the interstates, is a shame. Because I've gone to a funeral of a woman who left her gun in the glove box on I-39 in a rest area, and she was murdered by a guy who needed a car. And he killed her to get her ride, and she was a law-abiding citizen, left her gun in the glove box as a good law-abiding citizen, and he killed her while she was using the restroom there at the rest area. A true tragedy indeed.
John, we also, when it comes to the FOID card issues, hear a lot, well, it's already been declared unconstitutional, and I think a lot of people point to the Vivian Brown case, but that only impacted that individual when it came to being able to have a gun inside their home without a FOID card. What other kinds of FOID card cases are there out there that you're aware of?
Well, there was the Thomas Mag case where you can't have your FOID card revoked over a mere arrest, which helps people like the nurse up in Chicago who shot a carjacker, or a guy who was going to be a carjacker, who suffered a sudden and profound error in his victim selection process, and she was arrested. Charges were dismissed by Cook County prosecutors the next morning. It took her 8 or 9 months to get her FOID card and concealed carry licenses back, which is, again, a travesty under the law. And so that's an example. I believe ISRA's got a federal case over the FOID card challenging the constitutionality of it on a facial challenge statewide, but that case is a year or two in pleadings behind ours. And there's who knows what else is out there, but I know Kwame Raoul's got no shortage of litigation related to gun rights right now, and he's busy. And the thing is, his 450 attorneys have proven themselves less than skilled and adept at defending these laws and schemes that we've got here in Illinois that supposedly keep us safe, when in fact they do nothing except handicap the good guys' ability to have the guns to protect themselves and their families from bad guys.
Guns Save Life is the website. Search it out. Resource for those interested in tracking all things Second Amendment in Illinois and beyond. John Bach, greatly appreciate you taking the time with us this morning. We'll connect again soon, all right?
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
You too. It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News.